In compliance with Chapter 231, Public Law 1975, entitled Open Public Meetings Act, adequate notice of this meeting has been provided as specified in the Act. Proper notice of this open public meeting was provided in the notice of January 4th, 2024. Said notice was posted at the entrance of the Nutley Board of Education offices, mailed to the Nutley Township Clerk, sent to happen to Nutley, sent to the Nutley Sun on January 4th, 2024, and posted on the district website. Can everybody please stand for the flag salute? To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Mr. Balsamo. Here. Mr. Battaglia.
Here.
Mrs. Dancheck Martin. Here. Dr. D'Elia.
Here.
Mr. Fraginels. Mr. Kaczynski.
Here.
Mrs. Quirk.
Here.
Mr. Scotty.
Here.
And Mr. Ferraro.
Here. Okay, the motion for approval of the minutes? All in favor? Opposed? Mr. Superintendent, any correspondence?
No correspondence.
My fellow board members and I want to express our gratitude to the community for your patience during this challenging time. Since our last meeting, there has been much anxiety and apprehension regarding the corrective action plan and how it may impact our district, particularly our special education children and staff. I want to emphasize that the plan is a living document, subject to modification as we review all areas of our budgetary system from top to bottom. The current financial situation is extremely challenging on many levels, and we are working to find solutions that provide for a sustainable budget that secures programs for all our district children. As a parent of a severely autistic daughter, I understand the fears and pressures faced by special education parents. I share those fears for my own child and for the future of my other children. But I also want to reassure that every board member and the entire administration shares that same commitment to our children. Each decision we make will prioritize the needs of our students first and foremost. I urge the community to critically assess the information circulating on social media. While social media can be a valuable tool for communication, it can also spread misinformation and fuel unnecessary panic. Please verify any claims you encounter before you share them widely. If you have a question or concern, please reach out to the board or the administration for answers. As public figures, we understand criticism, but we also have families that are affected by hurtful comments. Please remember that everyone is accountable for their words and actions. Now, despite our financial challenges, I want to emphasize that our schools are open, our teachers are teaching, and our students are learning, playing sports, and participating in all their usual activities. Our top priority is ensuring that this continues uninterrupted. We are working with the New Jersey Department of Education and other stakeholders to develop a budget that is sustainable for the long term. This will require cooperation and open dialogue from everyone: the board, administration, teachers, staff, and the community. And I want to conclude by reiterating that our commitment to transparency. We continue to provide updates as we have them, and I know tonight our Chair of Finance will share more specifics. Again, thank you for your patience. Mr. Superintendent?
Thank you, Mr. President. I have an update for the happenings that have been going on in the district and the future events to come. We had the pleasure of attending Spring Garden and Lincoln School PTO meetings the past 2 weeks. Today, we met with the construction manager for the Lincoln School project, and next week we'll confirm the scope of the work and timeline with a projected set work to begin on June 23rd, and then by August 15th. We'll provide a timeline and scope of work to Lincoln School's community shortly, as promised at the PTO meeting. Our kindergarten orientations are happening. I had the pleasure of stopping in for 5 minutes at the Yanakaw kindergarten orientation, seeing all the parents. Thank all the principals, kindergarten teachers for working through the orientation with our new families. We also have sixth grade orientations happening. The middle school held their sixth grade student orientation last week. Last Monday, sixth graders from the 5 elementary schools went to the middle school and visited their future place, their future school. Our Treps Marketplace took place. This was hosted by our this was hosted in our Nutley High School auditorium. Students from around the district had the opportunity to develop their entrepreneurship skills by developing, marketing, and selling products they designed. We would like to recognize all the students that participated, their parents probably helped out a lot, as well as the teachers. We had, I believe, 7 teachers who worked very hard with our students, ranging from 4th to 8th grade. Of course, Chris Osaja, I'd like to thank her and Janine Loconsolo for organizing, and Chris especially for running that event. Personally, I purchased a keychain for my daughter. It was her birthday, as well as some gourmet dog treats. That seemed to be the trend there for my niece. I'd like to thank the NEF for co-sponsoring that, along with the other people I mentioned. Did attend the CPAC Parent Committee, the Special Education Parents Advisory Committee. I'd like to thank the parents for inviting myself and the board members. Last week, during the meeting, the parents shared many concerns, including the transition plan for the ERI classes at Washington School. I do have an update in that area. We have secured professional learning opportunities for our teachers with faculty from the Maywood campus of South Bergen Jointure, as well as continue to retain the paraprofessionals in that program as we transition to our environments. We had the NEF meet and greet that same night, which I could not attend because I was at the CPAC meeting, but the Nutley Educational Foundation had a meet and greet for new members. A plug for Educational Foundation. This group supports our district teachers and students by funding co-curricular programs and classroom materials. They secure funding through donations and events. They grant money to our educational system. They're always looking for membership, and please consider attending their Sip and Savor event on June 11th. Next month, we'll present information on the district school performance reports. Many of the different rankings and district school comparisons come from these reports. I'm very happy to share that U.S. News and World Report ranks Nutley High School at 160 out of 426. That's up 11 positions from the previous year. Good job to the entire educational community, many of whom are present tonight. Future events, we're starting New Jersey Student Learning Assessment testing. We'll be starting next week in many of our buildings. Please look for information. Parents, please look for information from your building about procedures for those days, charging Chromebooks, being on time. We'll be notifying COGAT scores will be sent home from grade 3 over the next couple of weeks. Nutley High School will celebrate the Honor Society induction tomorrow evening here. High School Choral Concert on May 14th. The Art Show on May 15th. The World Language Honor Society induction ceremony on May 16th. And its annual Wellness Day on May 20th, as well as the instrumental concert on May 22nd. Nutley High School has also released its final exam schedule the week of June 10th. John Walker Middle School will host its middle school concert on May 29th. The elementary spring concerts and field days have started and are continuing in all of the buildings. Plans are underway for the Junior Olympics on May 22nd and Lead Picnic on June 6th. Finally, the district is in preparation of our extended school year program and strategies program during the month of July. Information will be shared with parents shortly. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Banya. Mr. Battaglia?
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the Finance Committee have met continuously since our last public meeting with the representatives of the Administrative Office to push forward several initiatives as we work towards setting a final budget for the fiscal year 2024-2025 due May 15th. Areas of focus include ongoing budget review with the objective to identify inefficiencies in budgetary expenditures, rebuilding of the business office, identifying overdue obligations, and limiting the impact the district's cash flow issues have on daily operations. The reorganization of the business office. The district has engaged Nizavachia, the accounting firm, as well as whose expertise in state statutes regarding budgetary formation and knowledge regarding the best practices and policies of the business office for districts similar to Nutley have proven invaluable. We've also re-engaged with Geltrude & Company with the objective that their firm will provide ongoing support for processing and reconciliation of key business office functions. The board's goal is for the business office to close our books monthly within the fiscal year and hand over our books for an external audit in a timely manner when the fiscal year is concluded. We believe a long-term relationship with Geltrude will help the district accomplish these critical tasks economically and without interruption. These two organizations working in conjunction with our existing business office staff and our current auditor will give the district an opportunity to effectively and efficiently manage these necessary daily, weekly, monthly, and annual budgetary and reporting responsibilities in a cost-effective manner. On April 25th, Kent Bainey and myself met with Joanne Wilson, our treasurer of school monies. Joanne has been with the district since 2013 in this capacity. Her responsibility is to reconcile and certify the information provided on the monthly treasury report is an accurate accounting of our bank statements. To put it simply, Ms. Wilson's only responsibility is to verify the beginning balances, receipts, disbursements, and ending balances 1 month in arrear, and that they are accurately reflected on the report, no more, no less. It is neither Ms. Wilson's responsibility nor is she in possession of material information to provide a qualitative opinion on the fiscal health of the district. This week, we will post an FAQ that will provide further detail on the role of a treasurer, and we hope this will provide the public an accurate understanding as to those responsibilities. The Board of Trustees are also aware that the district is deficient in posting our treasurer's report, which is typically done monthly. We've asked Ms. Wilson to review the reports she has provided going back to September 23rd, and we intend to publish all of these reports ahead of our May board meeting on the 20th. The Board of Trustees are aware of the impact Nutley's financial crisis is having on many of our community members and our service providers. As previously stated, we are in arrears on many outstanding obligations dating well back into 2023. The board has asked the administration to prepare a current list of overdue bills, held checks, and outstanding invoices whose checks have yet to be generated. We will make this list available to the public so all of our partners and the recipients are notified of Nutley's intention to meet their obligations and any omissions can be rectified quickly. We hope this list will be available within the next week and our backdated obligations are met within the calendar month of May 2024. On behalf of the board, I'd like to thank the community for your ongoing support and patience as we work through these issues in a timely and expedient manner. It would be a gross oversight if we failed to thank the members of our faculty across all disciplines for their continued efforts to ensure the district is operating daily without disruption. Although we are moving towards finalizing a budget for the upcoming school year, which will be submitted to the state on or before May 15th, we will immediately begin preparation of the following year's budget for the years 25-26. Our goal remains to establish a long-term sustainable budget which meets the needs of our children in a fiscally responsible manner. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Battaglia. We now come to the portion of our meeting where we allow members of the public to address the board. In this section, we allow comments on reports, resolutions, and all school-related matters. Our board regulations number 0167 allow 20 minutes for these communications. Each person shall be limited to 3 minutes, and we ask that you try to stay within this requirement. Speakers may speak more than once, only after all others wishing to speak on a topic have been heard. All statements will be directed to me as the chairperson, and no one may address board members individually. Please be reminded that if your statement is too lengthy, abusive, obscene, irrelevant, or redundant, your participation may be terminated. Comments concerning district employees and our students will not be responded to. Please remember to state your name and address each and every time you address the board. For questions where the board may not have an immediate answer, the board will take information and respond to it at an appropriate time. Does anyone have any comments?
Okay, my name is Richard Sabello. I live at 391 Harrison Street. I've been a bus driver in the town of Nutley for the last 6.5 to 7 years, and I hope with the candor of this board, we can settle some of the questions that are being asked around town. Some are rumors, some aren't. First question is, what is the exact amount of the budget deficit? Now, if you want to answer at the end of my statement or per question, that's up to you.
No, we could answer that now. We've answered that in previous meetings. We've also put out a Q&A that addressed it. The short deficit right now is somewhere around $7 million.
Okay. Was the missing funds due to misappropriation, an accounting error, mismanagement, or criminal action?
We can say at this point in time that we have not found any information in our investigation that criminal action was taken.
Okay. Is the town insured for this amount of money? if it is a criminal action?
We have insurance, but, that's something that's going to have to be looked at further.
Now, is there any suspects? I understand you can't mention names or anything like that, but
All of your, and first of all, thank you for your questions. I would state one material fact that is important as we talk about a look into what occurred and what the facts and circumstances are to what occurred. When this process is completed, one of the key next steps, right now we're focused on the budget because we have a deadline that we have to put a budget forth to the state by state statute by May 15th. But once that is complete, we will bring in a third-party, non-affiliated accounting firm to do a forensic audit. Once that information is available, we'll be able to answer a lot of the questions that I know you, and respectfully thank you for asking it on behalf of the community, all have to make sure that what we think happened is what actually did happen.
okay, my next question is, was the commissioners aware of this shortfall before they merged with the Board of Education?
Was the commissioners aware of the shortfall?
Before you merged with the Board of Education?
No, we addressed the issue with regard to our meeting previously in March. We discussed it with the commissioners at that time as well.
Okay,
And I'd just like to make one point of clarity. The commissioners, the Board of Commissioners in Nutley and the Board of Education are not merged boards.
they're not merged?
We are not
No.
merged boards. We are two separate boards with two separate responsibilities, but we work together in collaboration to promote things forward within the district and within the community.
Another rumor, right? Sorry. Isn't it true, though, that each special needs child is allocated funds from the state? And each year, it must be kept in a separate account and held by the board and can be only used for the education and welfare of the child. Was this account compromised, and why?
Yeah, so the funds we receive from the state for special education are used for special education students.
Was it compromised?
No, it was not compromised. We used
Okay,
those
thank
funds.
you.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
There has also been rumors circulating that the transportation department will be outsourced to reduce the cost because of the shortfall. Most special needs parents have told me horror stories about the independent companies who run the buses. Many of these drivers do not have CDLs. Many do not have child aids. Many do not speak or understand English. Speeding, accidents, children forgotten and not picked up, children left unattended and not properly seated are common complaints against the independent bus companies. Now, I deal with these buses every day because I go to the Phoenix Center and I see a load of different private buses. And I see what goes on. The Nutley Transportation Department is a well-run and efficient part of the school system. They do their best every day. Thank you. They do their best every day to see that our kids are well cared for and they're on time for school. No parent is refused an accommodation. If they are late or need a time change, we comply. I say our kids because they belong to our friends and neighbors, and we treat them as if they were our own. If you think our kids are more secure by outsourcing the transportation department, you are sadly mistaken. We are the first line of defense for these kids. No one except teachers spend more time with the children and parents than we do. I believe the parents who are attending this meeting are very concerned about their children's safety. In light of the rumors concerning this outsourcing of the transportation board. They're very concerned about it. Another rumor is in circulation is that the town plans to raise our real estate taxes by 2.5% to help cover the lost money. Is this true?
So every year, there's an increase in the budget, right? So that's kind of what we're at the point now of determining what funds are needed for next year's budget. So we have not gotten to that point yet where we've determined exactly what the percentage is. But per the state, we are capped at 2%.
Okay. Now, the 2020 to 21 budget, 21 to 22, wasn't this budget balanced? And wasn't there a small overage that we had extra money?
I don't have that information, with me now, so.
Well, I've looked it up on the internet, and they said there was a small, surplus. Not a big surplus, but a small surplus. Now, the proposed budget for this year, isn't it a little bit less than last year's budget?
If I could just very quickly provide a comment for you. All of our budgets, as per state statute, are balanced. So when they're submitted to the state, revenues and expenditures are equal. The issues, and I recommend going back to the FAQ, which clearly lays out how a deficit was created for us in this district, ties to overestimating and underestimating expenses and revenues for reasons that we're just not going to get into at this time. Our intention is to put forth a budget that is less than what we actually expended last year, but will exceed what our proposed budget was from last year. So there will be an increase.
Now, just last statement. Isn't it true that a municipal workers bill was passed and that Chapter 66 says about outsourcing, that all people in the board are in my people have to be notified 180 days before any bids are sought from any outside source for our outsourcing?
We have our attorney here with us, so. Scott.
Yeah, I mean, we're subject to Title 18A. We're not under the municipal ordinances, but we have deadlines to provide notice to, whether it's teachers, May 15th for, we have to notify teachers of non-renewals and things like that. So we're subject to statutes on when we have to notify people, yes.
Now, was any bids accepted or looked for or anything from outside sources? Have they been asked yet? Because nobody has notified us.
No, that's what we're exploring all options at this point. But there hasn't been any decisions made.
Okay, I thank you for your time.
Thank you. So before you ask your question or make your comment, I just make a motion to suspend the 3-minute rule for tonight.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Good evening, Board of Ed members. Lisa Holler, 59 Emily Avenue, parent of graduates from classes 2001, 2007, and Brittany Holler, class of 2015, special ed. My children are long gone from this institution, but I still have a vested interest in this town. I've been a homeowner for 40 years, paying exorbitant taxes, but I am now a grandmother of 2 young boys that also now call this town home. So now my daughter is also paying exorbitant taxes here. But more importantly, now my grandsons attend Nutley schools. This is one of the things that we all love about this town, the multi-generational families staying here and the family history that we all create. When the word of this embarrassing debacle in our system came to light, I was, suffice it to say, shocked, saddened, and mad as hell. We as a town put our faith in you, the Board of Ed, to ensure the stability needed to educate care, and protect our children. You all volunteered for this position. No one asked you to run, but you asked for our support, and look where our loyalty has led us. You're sitting on that stage. You're sitting on that stage and you are assuring us that our children will not be affected by the misappropriation of funds. I would like to know who you consider our children, because once again, it's the special needs department being recognized as the extra. More specifically, our paraprofessionals and our transportation department. This is not the first time that this issue has been visited. It was considered when my Brittany was also in school, and I thank God every day that the paras were not let go back then, because they're the most integral part of a special needs classroom. Our children form special bonds with these extras, as you call them. These children, and we as their parents, live for routine, familiarity, and the feeling of safety. And now you want to change the dynamic of their classrooms daily, weekly, or monthly by hiring and bringing in out of districts. You want to cut the paras, whether it be by layoff or whether it be by cutting their hours to 30, just so we don't have to pay their benefits anymore. These things are just not acceptable. It's not our fault, it's not our children's fault that you have misappropriated the funds. I mean, you just admitted that there was no criminal act. You just said no criminal act, which means we have to put it on you now that those funds are missing. We were actually hoping there were criminal funds, criminal action taken, but now we have to put it on you. It's not acceptable. Our kids cannot relate to a different person in the classroom all the time. They cannot enter transportation without knowing that Miss Natalie or Mr. Frank will not be the faces they see when they enter their bus every day. It's hard enough as a parent to let go of the safety control that becomes magically installed into us when we are blessed to be given the honor of raising a special child. But having installed paraprofessionals that become part of our family makes a bunch of that anxiety go away every single day. I would never have made it through all those years without Mr. S., Mrs. Pucci, and Mrs. D'Angelo. They cared for my Brittany as if she was one of their own children. Most of you will never understand how important it is that they know and understand your child. They know how each child works. They can instantly sense whether it's going to be a good day or a bad day. They laugh with them when they're being silly. They discipline them when necessary. They cry with them when they're sad, and they love them unconditionally. Having permanent drivers and aides on our buses is crucial to the safety of our kids. They already know if little Jimmy's a runner, or if little Kathy can't quite get up the steps too well, or if little Brittany has such severe anxiety that she needs to be comforted through the entire ride. I'd like to know why the most vulnerable of our students is always the first to be punished. I would like a guarantee here tonight. I'd like a guarantee from each and every one of you that our special needs education in this town will not be affected. And that includes services to the children, along with the positions of all teachers, paraprofessionals, and transportation. We need their full-time we need it guaranteed. We can't wait till September for you to decide, well, no, they're not going to be in the bus. It's going to be somebody else. We need to know now. Can you guarantee us that?
No, we can't guarantee you that.
Why not?
Okay, I mean.
Why not?
Look, we
Why
have-
can't you
look,
guarantee that?
we-
Why can't that be guaranteed?
Because we have a responsibility to.
You
to-
have a
to create
responsibility to
sustainable
the
budget.
children, the responsibility is to the kids and to the special needs kids. This cannot happen again. Not in Nutley. This is Nutley we're talking about.
So I also just, and I think you know that I have a special needs
I
child.
most
You-
certainly
You
know.
most certainly
Of
do, right?
course.
Okay, so there's 4 other board members here that also have children with either a disability or a sibling with a disability. We understand,
I know
okay,
you
but
understand.
we have a responsibility to look at all of the things that we can to create a sustainable budget. That does not mean that that's where we're going to go, but we have a responsibility to do that.
But the fact that you're saying but, the fact that you're putting but in that statement tells us here right now that there's a really good chance that those paras are going to be taken out of that class. I get it. I get the budget has to be met. We all get it. We pay the budget. It's our money. So we get that. But this cannot happen again. Not to our special needs kids. I know you know that. I know when your daughter gets on a bus, when my daughter gets on a bus, they have to see the same faces. They can't have Jabip and Jaboop coming in here and looking up at, my daughter would never get on the bus. She would never get on the bus if it were not the same people every day. That familiarity is the most important thing to our kids. They have to be comfortable, like they're coming home to mom. They're going into their classroom, mom's there. Mrs. Pucci's there, mom's there. This is what we need. And we need you all to guarantee us as soon as possible that these paras and these transportation, they take care of our kids every day, that give us that feeling of safety, that I could let my daughter out of my house and I know nothing's gonna happen to her. And at 3:30, she's gonna come back in that door and she's gonna be laughing and happy. We need that. Please, please, please. Make that the first priority when you're sitting at your meetings. First priority. Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Donna Ferraro, 34 Roosevelt Street. I don't have to say anything because it's already in my notes what these two people have already gotten up, but I just want to add a little something to it. I was talking to a few staff members around our surrounding areas, and they have had or have right now privatized paras with their special education students. It's not a good scenario. I've been told that they have had several that come in, smell like pot. One individual told me, the woman who had come in, that she had a gang tattoo on her forehead. And most of the complaints that were privatized individuals did not speak English. The companies also sent in different persons to cover the assignment. So you as the educator never know who is in the building. They do not get to stay in one classroom or assigned to one child to have some stability. My concern also is, and it's always been this concern, is when these companies hire these individuals, if they are short-staffed, they will send in someone to cover the assignment. However, whether or not their fingerprints have been approved yet, you cannot have this in this situation. I had the, privatizing the paraprofessionals. I don't want to see that as a special educator. You can't have that. They are our right hand, and some of you that are educators on the board understand where I'm coming from. But if you're not an educator and you don't understand that, you have to have stability in the classroom for our most vulnerable children. My next question, besides the bus drivers and the paras, are you planning to privatize the custodians?
We are looking at top-down all areas to find efficiencies. That's where we're at this point. It's early. We have a budget that we have to submit to the state by the 15th. A lot of these things that are being discussed tonight are not part of that budget. But our responsibility is to look at all areas from top to bottom to find out where we can get efficiencies in everything that we do.
Okay, because also they know our children, they know our buildings, and the children know them. Many parents and teachers have fought to get our security, our resource officers here in the buildings. They are not costing us any benefits, and I'm hoping that you're not even thinking about getting rid of our security, because in this day and age, we need secure buildings. So my one question is that I have brought up for many years, and the last superintendent had told me with the administration that it's not union dues that we pay for all administrators. It is an association fee. How many administrators do we have that we're paying their administration fee? Because even if it's 25 at $1,000 a year, that's $25,000 we could use towards supplies. They're making enough of money to be paying their own union dues or association fees.
As I stated just before, we are looking at everything from top to bottom to find efficiencies.
Okay.
Okay?
Well, I'm
It's not
hoping.
gonna just focus on one area. It's gonna be from top to bottom.
Okay.
One of the things that I just want to point out, and look, we appreciate, of course, all of the work that a lot of our staff does from all areas. We understand that. But when you look at budgets and you look at costs that are rising at 3 to 4 times the amount of the tax levy that we are permitted to increase it to.
Mhm.
So we are permitted under statute to increase the tax levy by 2%. But when you look at areas across, not just Nutley, but if you read, all of the papers, you'll see how many other districts have challenges that are currently they're working through because of rising costs of a lot of different areas that are rising at rates of 8 to 10%. You could see that where the challenge becomes, right? So that's where it's difficult, and as a board, we're committed to looking from top to bottom to find efficiencies. That's our responsibility. We understand that that there may be hard decisions that have to be made. We're not at that point yet.
Okay.
But
Well-
I'm sorry, I just
Mhm.
want, that's the difficult part that I think needs to be out there, that if we are allowed to raise the tax levy by only 2% and costs are going up by 8 to 10%, you could see that the math just doesn't work.
Yeah.
Okay, and every area across the entire district is important. Special education, super important. I am a special education father. I understand how important that is. I understand how important our paras are, how important our transportation drivers are.
Okay.
But likewise, our sports programs, our music programs, all of those other programs are just as important, right?
Yes,
And
they
so
are.
that's the challenge. No, I'm sorry,
They're
and I understand, okay, I do, but I didn't mean that they're not as important. I understand, and I appreciate, thank you, okay? But that's the challenge that this board faces, is that those costs that are increasing make it difficult for us. We have to find efficiencies. And so that's why the commitment is that we are looking from top, bottom, across all budgetary lines.
Okay. I know you have a lot of, I'm going to say, department heads. Are you planning to put them back in the classroom, maybe even if they teach 4 or 5 instead of just teaching 1 class? Is that a possibility?
As I said, from top to bottom, everything is being looked at.
Okay. I just wanted to let you know, I do respect all of you, and I wouldn't want to be in your position right now. But I hope you are listening to the parents for all these vulnerable children that we call them our children. And they're
Absolutely.
always our children. And
we
I
are.
hope that you are
We
just
are,
listening to
and-
their concerns.
We are, and we appreciate your concerns. We appreciate everybody's concerns, all of the parents. I was at the CPAC meeting Thursday night,
Yes, I know.
and as a special, my daughter is severely autistic.
I know.
Okay, you know my daughter.
Yes.
All right, 16 years old, does not understand language, is not able to communicate, is not potty trained, and so many other challenges that she faces. But I'm not alone on this board. There are other board members who either work in the special education field, have children with IEPs or disabilities, have siblings. We understand, and we would never do anything to put those children at harm.
Okay. I hope you do that for all the parents that are here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Janice Fraser, 256 Whitford Avenue. So I want to give a different perspective on general education. Everybody has spoke eloquently about the special education students. I want to speak about students who are impacted in other ways. I have a senior in high school. He is thriving. He's had a fantastic experience in Nutley High School. And my greatest hope right now is that my younger child, who will be a freshman next year, will have the same experience. At the last BOE meeting, a parent asked about FAQ number 8, I believe it's Mark Jacobson. And paraphrasing, he asked, it asked what the minimal impacts to the 24-25 school year would be. And Mr. Banya responded, and I quoted this, copied this directly from the video from the last meeting. Staffing is something we are looking at. At this time, we are looking at ways to have minimal impact on students. In some cases, if there's a low class size, there might be a high class size, mostly at the secondary level. So I take from that there will be teachers let go. And there are teachers that have received certain letters. I believe they're called Rice letters. So that is a distinct possibility. So I assume with that reduced number of teachers, that electives would probably be first to be reduced or eliminated. Is that true?
I'm sorry, could you just repeat that again?
Are electives going to be reduced or eliminated due to the reduction in staff at the secondary level?
Yeah, right now we're at the very beginning stages looking at staff, the impact of the budget cycle on staffing. Once we have an understanding for what exactly that looks at, we will look at the resources we have and look at what runs, what doesn't run based on the resources we have.
Okay, that's quite vague.
I'm sorry, we're at the very beginning of this.
I understand that. But for example, what I'm seeing is my son, the two things he wants to do in high school, one of them, he wants to take AP computer science more than anything. That's the one thing he's looking forward to. That's an elective. If you reduce math teachers, they have to teach those basic courses, right? Algebra, geometry, all the required courses. So then comp sci, you're not going to have enough teachers to teach multiple sections of comp sci. There goes an elective for my son, right? So what's going to happen then when you have this trickle-down effect from the younger kids coming into the high school when my son's an older kid? It's going to have a lasting effect. If you have children in older elementary school, this is going to affect you too. So keep that in mind. I want to read two belief statements from the 161-page 2024-2025 program and study for Nutley High School. We believe that at Nutley High School that students should be challenged and inspired by the curriculum and extracurricular activities, and students should continue to develop intellectual curiosity and problem-solving skills in our global society. How do you reconcile those beliefs with reducing staff in school? How are we going to stimulate intellectual curiosity if you're reducing these electives? These electives are where students choose what they want to study in. This is what they find out what their passions are. It may be something they knew nothing about coming into the high school, and they come out wanting to study that in college or go to further schooling for that. That's going to be taken away if you take away these electives. So you're in the beginning stages of this, but I would like a response when you do complete your assessment. In that 161-page program of study, how much is that going to be reduced? Is it going to be down to 150 pages, 140 pages? How many classes are going to be cut? And some of these electives are required for graduation, practical arts, performing arts, etc. They have graduation requirements. How is that going to work when you have fewer electives to choose? Are students going to be forced into study hall because they're not able to get their electives? My son is a freshman. He's going to have last priority because you have to take care of the seniors, juniors, sophomores, then the freshmen, which is understandable. But he should not be missing out. He shouldn't have a different experience than his older brother. They're only 4 years apart. Education should not change that drastically in 4 years. I also want to know, how large can class sizes be at the middle school and high school if these class sizes might be eliminated? What is the max that we might be seeing for students at John H. Walker Middle School and Nutley High School?
Sorry. Yeah, so the max, we haven't talked through class size max. Our class sizes are, I would say, relatively right now, currently 22 to 26 in that range. At the middle school, I'd say they're a little bit lower based on our teaming approach. If there was, staff that were removed, class size may go up as a factor to run these electives, things that you're talking about. I don't think, this going best practice, going beyond, you definitely wouldn't want to go over 30, things like that. But that's kind of where we are. We haven't looked at the impact or the data regarding removing staff because we haven't removed staff yet. We're still having those conversations, and we'll see how that impacts things like class size and offering electives.
Okay. So I know you all are in a very difficult situation trying to fix his financial issues. As the last speaker said, I would not want to be in your position. I'm not a financial person. I couldn't even begin to unravel what's happening. But I think that we need some transparency in how this process happens. We understand that personnel issues you cannot discuss. I know your lawyer here would tell me the exact same thing. I'm not going to go into the specifics. However, I want to know, who makes the decisions regarding these reductions? Is it done internally by Nutley folks, or is it done with the advice of an outside source, or is it someone from the state? How do we ensure that people are being fairly reduced and that there's not nepotism involved or somebody's friend, somebody's sister, et cetera? Because we all know somebody that's in a position due to relationship. It's not, yes, there's a rumor mill, but we live in a small town. Everybody's related to somebody, knows somebody. We know what's happening. How do we make sure that that doesn't happen? Because that probably is part of the problem of why we were here with, bids, going to people. So how do we maybe turn that around in Nutley and make sure that that part is fair, transparent, equitable, and that somebody isn't just going to get by because they're related to somebody?
So as far as relationships in that sense, right, we have to file disclosure statements every year. So if we have a family member that it works for the district, we have to disclose that.
Right, but how does that work with the process of reductions? And it's not just family members, it's friends, it's cousins, second cousins. They're huge families in town, which are like multi-generational, multi-spread out. So
If there were any reductions in force, RIFs, it's all set by law and statute, where in terms of tenure, bumping rights, seniority. So it has to be set by law. It's something we would sit down with the union to go over and to review and to make sure we're on the same page in terms of who would have a seniority right, who would have a bumping right, but it's all set by law. So it doesn't matter who's related to who. We're going to follow the law.
okay, so if you're saying we, that means it's Nutley determining who's part of the RIFs, not the state.
Correct. Yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
the board.
would it not be more impartial if you had a third party or the state involved with the RIFs?
Well, the state has to look at the corrective action plan and has to, and the county superintendent, who is the state, has to look at the budget and review all these type of things as well. So the state's involved in terms of oversight of it, but that would be in terms of how it would be implemented is set by statute and by the board.
Okay, so it's going to be people from Nutley that sit here and say, okay, employee A, B, C, D, and E. We're going to knock out B and E. That's the level we're looking at, right? Like, there's not going to be an impartial person looking at, these are the 5 employees, the qualifications.
So when you get to that area of
Mhm.
who bumps who, the Board of Education, that's not our purview. Right?
Okay, whose purview is it?
Well, that's the administration, right?
Okay, so Mr.
Okay.
Banya, Ms. Loconsolo,
Yeah.
content
So with the budget we're given, a needs-based approach identifies staffing in key
Mhm.
areas, and we make recommendations to the board, who approves those recommendations or not by vote.
Okay, so my last point, I think it's disingenuous to say that this financial situation is not affecting extracurricular programs right now. My son is on track and field. Our pole vaulters do not have a regulation mat. So they're not supposed to practice demuro. They go to meets not having practiced, or they have to go to private facilities and pay to get training. That's a problem. There's no funding to purchase one, especially now. Baseball training for sub-varsity teams, it's not being covered by the district. The Booster Club was asked to cover this cost. Crew meet fees, normally covered by the district, are now being covered by the parent Booster Club. Could we have some transparency about how the budget cuts are affecting extracurricular activities? I'm going to say it. It's no secret that certain sports receive more attention and funding, and I hope certain sports and activities would not be disproportionately affected. And I would really like transparency as to how that money is allocated and how these reductions are affecting these programs. I know my son runs track and field. Those uniforms, they are so old. His son, his friend who's a senior, runs with a ripped uniform. Some of the kids on track and field are running with cross-country shorts because there aren't enough. Track and field is probably one of the biggest sports. It's the most inclusive sport because they will take everybody. If you don't make a certain team, you are welcome on track and field. And so many of those kids get so much out of that experience, and there is so little support for that. It's really disheartening. So to my point about these effects on their extracurricular activities, what I and many parents want is transparency. We don't want to be told one thing publicly, that there's going to be minimal impact, and then when we talk amongst our friends, we find directly there are impacts to our students right now. I won't go into it, but I had an experience this year where I asked about an impact to my child's school, to a certain classroom, told one thing, it's going to be fixed, going to be fixed, going to be changed, and then, no, we're not going to do that, we change our mind. That kind of beta switch does not engender support or trust. If you want people to trust you, if you want people to believe that we're giving the right information, to believe that everything you're doing is above board, you have to give us more information and as much information as you're able to. I know you have limits. I fully understand there are legalities to it, but I think your communication could be improved. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Jessica Mabel. I'm here tonight representing the Education Association of Nutley. Thank you. The address is 337 Passaic Ave. I'd like to thank the parents and the community members who are speaking up on behalf of our members and our students. This is my 17th year as an educator in Nutley. And although I don't have an address here, for the last 17 years, I've been proudly calling this place my home. Today, I'm up here on behalf of the 576 members who show up every day for the students of Nutley, and we do so because we believe in them and their future. On behalf of those members, I'd like to say that we are disappointed that your leadership has put our students, our staff, this community in this situation. We are skeptical that the legitimacy of the same leadership is making informed decisions about possible cuts to the district in order to close the budget deficit. On March 19th, we received the same message the community did, that there were some financial concerns, but, quote, district does not anticipate a change in the programs or the education of the students of Nutley. End quote. On March 22nd, the message was, quote, it is important to prioritize our students' learning and care. We are committed to the education of our students, end quote. At the last meeting, you answered the question, will this deficit significantly affect the academic and extracurricular programs of our students? You guys answered, quote, no, but there will be minimal changes impacting the student programming of the 2024-2025 academic year, end quote. So tonight, I'm here expecting you to keep your word. Because cuts don't just mean a reduction in staff. It also means bigger class size, less one-on-one or individualized instruction, loss of electives, cuts to supports programs like flex, and security issues. I ask that you make any decisions moving forward with our students' best interest in mind without trying to undo mistakes that were created as quickly as possible. At new teacher orientation this summer, I told our new staff members that Nutley was an amazing place to work, and I was proud to be part of this community. Many of these staff members have left previous districts and careers to join Nutley based on that reputation. These staff members have come to us with seasoned experience and enriched our students' educational experiences both inside and outside of the classroom. If these staff members were to be let go as a result of years of financial mismanagement, which is no fault of their own, it would be a huge loss for our students, the staff, and the community. It is very sad and disappointing what's happened. We do appreciate your commitment to investigating and remediating these matters. However, we are fully aware that at the end of the day, the students, staff, the community of Nutley Public Schools are the ones who will be impacted most. Throughout this ordeal, we've heard about rising healthcare costs and Social Security and out-of-district special education students. But at the end of the day, some of the blame of what happened does fall on the shoulders of each and every one of you up there at this table. It is your job to have a system of checks and balances in place. It is, in fact, your job to notice red flags, question those red flags, and not wait for them to get to this magnitude. I understand that the next couple of weeks you need to make extremely hard decisions. We believe that we have the same goal, which is to continue to do everything we can for the educational and emotional well-being of our students. The EAN looks forward to working together with you to come up with necessary solutions to move forward and heal. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Brendan Intandola. I live at 39 Overlook Terrace. What is the cost so far? What is the meter running at for the financial crisis? You've retained counsel, additional accountants. What is the cost so far?
You're asking what our current running cost is for this particular situation?
Correct.
I mean, we're in a $7 million deficit.
Yes.
I mean, I'd like to make it very clear to the public, regardless of what the assumption is on how we got here, which we have a good handle on how we got here. Our issue right now is we've overexpanded our district. So I'd like you to, and apologies, he will have all the time he needs. The current running cost right now is to be determined because we need some support to make sure we don't make these mistakes again.
Okay. Yeah, I don't question the hiring of all the additional expertise. I'm just questioning what the cost is. Is the state attorney general involved in this matter?
It's the New Jersey Department of Education is involved.
That I know, that's part of your
That's-
previous disclosures, but are other state agencies involved?
Well, we have to go through the Department of Education.
Well, I understand that as well, but is the state attorney general involved?
No.
Okay, thank you. Have the three ratings agencies, Moody's, S&P, Fitch, contacted the board or the municipal government in regards to this matter in terms of internal control failure or governance failures? And if so, can you describe what that communication has been like?
The Nutley Board of Education has not been contacted. I can't speak for the municipal board.
Okay, thank you. I just have one final point to make and to address the president's remarks at the beginning about rumor and innuendo. I've been in the news business for 35 years, starting with the maroon and gray right here in this building. When there's not accurate disclosure or fulsome disclosure, innuendo, rumor, half-truths fill the vacuum. When you read those things, it should be considered a reflection of what you're telling the community. And you have to bat them down as you did at the beginning of the meeting. It was the first matter of business for the board this evening. You really should reconsider a more proactive, fulsome, clear plan of disclosure to sort of decrease the anxiety that is so prevalent here this evening. Because when I read what the board has put out so far, after reading thousands of corporate documents and government documents over the years, I still don't know what's going on. I still don't know what happened. So, thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions or comments?
Hi, my name is Antonetta Nina, 20 Hudson Street. So I wasn't planning on speaking. I honestly don't follow a lot of what's going on, even though I do have 4 children. My oldest is a senior. He's about to get out. But I do have 2 children who are special needs. One is Joseph Nina. And I can't see everyone here who knows it. I can get very emotional.
I know you're the mom, but we need to be careful because obviously it's a
Right.
child and it's an area we really can't discuss. So
It's fine, because most people here, I pretty much grew up in Nutley. I'm pretty sure everybody knows who I am. I just want to put a point that if it was not for Lincoln, I'm going to specifically talk about Lincoln School. If it was not for Lincoln School, my son would not be where he is today. They have been the core, the paras and the teachers have been the core of my son's improvement. I'm gonna name some paras. I'm sorry, I have to. Miss Denise, if you are here, please stand up. Or is she here? 'Cause I have the worst eyesight. If it was not for her, I don't know where my son would be today. We have a new principal at Lincoln School, I believe about a couple years. Mrs. Benvenidos, where are you? If it was not for her, my son would not want to go to school every day. Okay? Now, and if you meet my son Joseph, he is a doll, loved by Lincoln School. He's actually going into 6th grade and he does not even want to leave Lincoln because to him, that's his home. Now we're going to go to my 3rd son, Valentino Nina. Valentino goes to the CP in Belleville. He is, I believe, the only child in Nutley that goes out of district to this specific school. So going back to what Richard said about the bus, Valentino unfortunately cannot take the bus to CP because when I asked about busing for him, they told me Nutley had no bus that can go there. So guess who takes him every day? I do. Why? Because I firsthand see outsourcing companies the way they treat the children. I take them every day, drop them off, pick them up. So I plead and ask you to please do not take the bus drivers away because it still gives me an opportunity one day in the future. Right now I'm a stay-at-home mom, but I don't know if one day I have to work or what my situation is. What about if I need to use the bus system? But most importantly, the powers, the teachers, please do not touch them. If you specifically, I don't know you specifically, you just said that you have a child with special needs, then you should know, do not touch them. Because at the end of the day, that $7 billion that you said was missing, that's not my problem. And that certainly isn't Joseph or Valentino's problem. None of us. So if something happened, all are you to be blamed for. And I don't feel bad. Because then when you get, I just don't feel bad for you guys. Because you guys wanted to be in that seat. You chose to be in that seat. Correct?
Yes, we did.
Now you got to come out with what's going to happen, okay?
Yes.
So please do not touch the paras, do not touch the teachers, do not touch the bus drivers. You guys need to figure out what you're going to do at this point. That's all I have
Thank
to
you.
say.
Thank you.
Nicholas Frey, 66 North Spring Garden Ave. I didn't anticipate it being a pep rally, but good for you guys. Good. This might be out of line. Do you care if I talk to the audience for a second? Directed? Okay, then I will focus on you, Mr. Ferraro, because I'm going to nerd out for a second. Somebody with my hands in finance, I understand how we got here. In the corrective action plan that was put out at the last meeting, one very telling paragraph was on, hold on, sorry. It was under paragraph 3, where the deficiency for 23-24 deficiency in cash flow shortfall, the review verified the audit, specific cash flow reports, identifying withheld checks, outstanding invoices, expected revenues, and projected expenses for the remainder of the year, which agreed with the auditor's projections. And what that means is what we were given was not correct. Everything that we were being provided by our business department was not accurate. Things were being withheld from the board and from our administration. That is how we got here. Now, looking back at 22 to 23, if you look at the revenue versus expense, there was a $7 million deficiency there. That is from what was being held by that department. So as much as we want to come out with our pitchforks, because of the situation that we were in, this was because of one department. Now, within that department, yes, the people on the board were the ones that approved it. Our previous administrator was the one that put that person in his position. But we have to understand why we are here. We are here because of the lax and checks and balances. Everything within this corrective action plan should have already been taking place. So my question is, why were these items not taking place? Why was the board not doing their checks and balances with what was being provided? Why were we not being provided the correct information based on the Treasury reports? Why do we put trust in one person or one department without any oversight?
I'll take the first stab at responding, and I appreciate your candor and content. The reality is, as you alluded, the issue is fairly complex as to how we got here. But what is in the corrective action report, I agree wholeheartedly, are the standard checks and balances that we would expect to see. And when we did not see them and they were not there, I can't speak to, with what occurred 20 years ago or 10 years ago. I can just tell you what I've seen and what this board has agreed we need to see, which is how this corrective action was put together. When you look at situations in other districts, there are times when there's malfeasance. There are times when there's bad board management. There's times when there's bad municipal government management. In this case, I think we have some situations that are directly tied to decisions made on budget, expectations that we had more capital than avail. We grew areas of this district too quickly. And we provide some services that we cannot afford to provide. There are ways that we can reduce those costs. I credit Mrs. Frazier, who came up and made a very good point. Our objective is not to remove programming. We should be adding programming to the district. But we're going to have to find ways to do that by putting the checks and balances in place that are in the corrective action plan. And more importantly, finding ways to ensure that we have as much student interaction on a daily basis as possible by high quality professionals, paras, teachers, administrators, all included.
Do other districts follow a similar path with what is detailed in this correction action plan? Meaning, are the checks and balances in place in Clifton that aren't in place here? Or do all districts across the board kind of follow similar structures? Financial structures.
I'm not sure exactly what other districts do. With regard to the budget, all, you know, and preliminary budgets, those are all sent to the county, the respective counties, BAs for review and approval in the state. So with regard to that, yes, they all do follow that.
How often does the board get to oversee checks and payments that are going out? Or is that just coming to you with the faith that what is in that information is correct?
Well, we rely on the fact that our professionals are providing us information that is accurate.
All right. So the reason I'm asking this question, in the March 25th meeting, there was one check that was declined by all 9 board members. That check was 217,667 for $533.99 for the person who is no longer at this table. So my question is there any oversight prior to those meetings about what is on that check register and the money going out the door?
Is your question specific to that one?
No, my question is, why is that check, or I'll ask it differently. Why is that check the only check that I have ever seen be declined? Why is there no other checks and balances in place prior to this meeting of why that is the only check that is not accepted?
That was consultation with our attorneys. So with regard to that,
So when it gets to the board meeting, everything has been scrubbed by the business department and everyone at this table is agreeing to it.
You ask good questions, but in terms of every single check, excuse me, the board doesn't get involved in every single check of the operations of the district.
Sure.
And ethically, they can't, because the board, under the code of ethics, is prohibited from the day-to-day operations of the district. They're here to set policy, not to run the district, and to see that it runs well.
I get that. However, within now this corrective action plan, a lot of what is in this corrective action plan starts with the phrase lack of communication or lack of transparency. So if what you're saying is correct, then we can no longer correct that lack of, because you are not legally obligated to correct it.
No, I think what came out of that is that there should be more communication, but they don't know what they don't know if they're not given the information. Now that they know that there was not good communication of checks and balances and things like that, including with the school treasurer. The school treasurer's function, as was pointed out already, they can only go by the information they're given. And if they're not given the information, then, but now that this has come to light, they can put processes in place in order to prevent it from happening again. That's the best I can answer it.
I get it, but I don't think it's good enough. And here's why. Sorry, Charlie, I saw that. And here's why. So a town is a corporation. It's a business, right? We have the CEOs here and the CFOs here. So if the CFO is not doing their job, that means the people underneath them are not doing their job. So if there's that backlog of communication dating back to the fall of 23, there's a problem, but the CEO doesn't know there's a problem. So once we get to that point, come March, and
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but Mr. Kaczynski had a medical procedure today, so he's just, stretching a little bit.
Once we get to that point in March and an email comes out and then there's no communication thereafter, there's a problem. And as multiple people here have said, it's a lack of transparency. So when I came up here on the board meeting on the 25th and asked, do you think the people in this room have faith in this board? And the answer is they should. We just need to believe that we should. And right now, it's still the lack of transparency of we should, because the information that's still being provided is vague. So as Janice said, and as multiple other people said, tell us as you know. Be clear with us, because that's what's missing. So when an audit comes out in February and you can see the discrepancy and you know that there's a backlog of information and you bring in auditors and you bring in all these people, make it clear that there's a problem, so that when a vague email comes out and the rumor mills start, and unfortunately rumor mills continue here, no offense to anybody, but some things have to go based on rumor. It's a problem. And it gets people fired up, and it gets people to not see the forest through the trees, that you need to finish a budget first before you can make decisions on forensic accountants, because that's what needs to happen. And when that forensic accounting happens, you can figure out where the problem is, because there's a problem. There was a problem 2 years ago. There was a problem 3 years ago, and it built up to this. So the problem is the lack of communication. So when you figure out where that problem existed and how much money that is, be clear with us and let us know. And once you have that man pinned to the wall, get him. Because there are 2 other districts that this has happened to, and nobody has gotten him. So make him accountable. And make sure that he doesn't work again, because that is the problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
Brendan Intandola, 39 Overlook Terrace. I neglected to ask one other question. If I recall correctly from your prior communications, the state can appoint a person to be a monitor in the district by virtue of the $7 million emergency loan. Has that occurred? Is the state installing a monitor in Nutley?
Not at this time, no.
Do you anticipate one?
At some point, we do anticipate. We have not gotten to that point. We haven't received that information from the state.
Okay, and what timeline?
We don't have a timeline. That's not our timeline. That's something that it's dependent on the state. We anticipate it to be within the next week or so. But again, we don't control. We've submitted the documents that we needed to submit to the state, and now we're just waiting to hear back from them.
Okay, one final question, perhaps for council. Can you describe, in instances like this, what does the state monitor do? When they have a seat at the table on the operation of your school district, how potent is their input? Do you have to listen to what they say? Is it a unilateral type of relationship? And when, as has been mentioned many times from the stage this evening, when this whole process of remediation and budgeting and damage control, what role does the state monitor play in all of that? Thank you.
The state monitor actually has very broad legal powers from the state. They can control hiring, firing, budgetary things. They have a wide latitude in what their authority is, because when they're, in essence, loaning money to the district to plug this hole, they have broad authority. And having experience of being in a state-controlled district in Jersey City Public Schools, where I was, they have a lot of authority over and oversight with it. And I just want to apologize. If you see me eating something, it's not being disrespectful. I'm a type 1 diabetic, and my sugar is like starting to tank a little bit. So.
Good evening. Tim Nugel, 12 Evelyn Place. So a little bit about myself. We raised 3 children here in Nutley. One of them graduated last year. You might remember her. She used to sit on stage with you to get the STUCO updates. I have 2 kids currently enrolled in school. our youngest daughter, special needs. Before I start, I just want to echo all the sentiment about the transportation. Please don't touch our transportation. I had a lot of questions here to drill into you about the transportation, but I think most of it's been said. I know it's getting late, so I'll spare you with those, but just please, they are an extended part of our family. They're critical for education. I'll try to focus a bit on things that weren't yet asked, things that as I've been reading and observing meetings of late, a lot of it is about the corrective action plan and the process for which it was made and submitted. So the last meeting I observed, it looked like, pardon the expression, but there was a lot of high-fiving going on about how quickly you took action on creating this corrective action plan since the issue was originally discovered and communicated. I'm not sure if that's necessarily a good thing. It could be a little reckless, if you ask me, to come up with knee-jerk decisions under a time crunch on how we could reconcile a $7 million and counting deficit. So while you were going through this process, who was consulted, may I ask, with some of the statements that you made about education not being impacted or special needs not being impacted? I mean, I know some of you said you have personal experiences, but were you speaking for all of us when those decisions were made?
The corrective action plan came as a result of myself meeting with the Assistant Deputy Commissioner and then requiring us to complete the corrective action plan prior to obtaining relief from the state. In all transparency, I was looking for the state monitor to input and have impact on the corrective action plan as it has been done in other districts to my knowledge. That corrective action plan is transparent. Not transparent. It is fluid, where as we receive more information or as a state monitor comes in, it will be impacted and updated as we move forward. So to answer part of your question, the corrective action plan by nature was a requirement of us applying for relief funding. It was impacted, to answer a second part of your question, by two legal counsels, the New Jersey Department of Ed county office, as well as our board. By statute, the Board of Education must create a state action plan to address the needs. It was our hope to do that with the help of the state. It was a requirement to get help from the state, and it will continue to be modified as we move forward.
All right, thank you for that. Now, from what I've heard said tonight, it sounds like the first step is you submit the corrective action plan. There's a series of recommendations for cuts, right? I noticed a lot of them were special needs. A lot of them were.
I just want to be clear. It's not necessarily cuts. It's that we have to review and investigate those areas. That does not necessarily mean that there's going to be cuts that are going to occur because of that.
Okay, but
Okay,
you're highlighting
we
the
just have-
areas you're
I mean,
going to take
that's,
a magnifying glass out on.
we just have a responsibility. Those are areas we have to look into.
Just to keep going, the corrective action plan is not like any I'm usually a part of. It's a fiscal corrective action plan, so we relied heavily on our auditors to identify key trends in the fiscal budget, hence leading to the action steps needed. Usually, I'm very familiar with curricular or personnel-related action plans. This is something totally different based on the data represented in trend analysis in our budget.
Okay, and this was required, and I've heard other things mentioned tonight about we're under a deadline to submit a revised budget by the 15th. I'm assuming the 15th of May? Okay.
By statute, we must do a preliminary budget by March 20th and then submit a finalized budget by May 15th.
And this revised budget, are you assuming that there's going to be cuts in certain areas? Or where do the figures in this revised budget come from as it relates to the corrective action plan?
Yeah, so one of the things we have to do is look at actual revenues coming in.
Right.
So what we've seen in our analysis is that one of the issues we had in the corrective action plan is our revenues have been operating inflated. So we have to rely upon the reliable revenues actually coming into the district and build a budget off that. The problem is that if you take this year's program and extrapolate it to next year with the added costs of things going up, that number is far from our actual revenues coming in based on state aid, tax levy, that type of thing. So the cuts would come in really the right sizing of the budget to actual revenues, as we've been acting in somewhat of an inflated fashion for a while.
Okay. And I feel like a bit we're kind of dancing around the issue that there's cuts reflected. You're telling me they're not necessarily cuts, they're revised scheduled revenues, but you're.
No, we are going to have to find the gap between where our programs currently are and the revenues we have coming in to build a balanced budget. So
Right.
that's an actual.
And that's a number lower than the current number.
Yes, the $7 million we referenced from this year's deficit is actually a loan in state aid. We get that's forwarded, and we'll begin repaying that, to my understanding right now, next year in our state aid package. So that repayment of loan will not be in this budget. This budget will simply be from our program that is expanded to the actual revenues coming in at this time.
Okay. And then with the proposed adjustments, when you factor in the monies that could be saved with the special education proposals, the busing, the paras, roughly of the $7 million deficit, how much is that you could potentially recoup?
Just to restate your question, you're asking how much of the proposed $7 million deficit is going to be corrected by the groups, impacting the groups that you just mentioned?
Yeah, well, I'm looking for a percentage. So of the $7 million that we have to recoup, how much of that is being recouped by the special ed cuts that you're
So I
proposing?
think I would be clear, our goal is not to recoup $7 million in 24 months, right?
Okay.
There are areas of the budget where we can move personnel. There are certain expenditures that are in Nutley School District outsized versus our peer groups, right? Everybody's talked about it. I mean, I'm not one to hide any of these factors, right? Nowhere did we say that we were going to materially cut special services. But what we are talking about is finding ways to reduce our total impact on our healthcare cost, because we have extraordinarily high participation in our healthcare program. And there are ways that we can do that. We're not talking about, and again, this is also some of the commentary that have come in from not just this audience, but people in the social media space. Our objective is not to outsource all of our current hourly employees. We have tremendous personnel in this district. Our objective is to keep as much of that personnel here as we can. But we have a deficit, and that deficit has to be corrected. And either we correct it by removing participation in things like healthcare, or by reducing the total participation in special services with that lower band of students that maybe could be supported with other means as opposed to specifically be in the program itself, or areas where we can find savings and expenditures that just didn't yield benefit. The South Bergen Joint Venture Program provided some benefit, but not for the cost. We're paying $1.4 million annually for it. And we had low participation and not a great response, from my understanding, from the personnel that were supporting it in our district. So our objective is to review everything top down. Do we have too many personnel in a particular band, whether it's administrator or in a para or in the teaching group? And we're going to right size it and still try to provide as much of the services we currently today, and eventually set ourselves up so that we can be adding programs, not removing them.
Yeah. So thank you. I've heard you say all that already. And again, and I appreciate you're in a very tough spot. So thank you for answering. Sorry if my questions seem redundant, but when do these proposals actually turn into action, and what are the gates, the decision-making gates that happen in between? Because I wasn't asked for these initial proposals for my input. I'm speaking about it now, but I want to know how I can make sure my voice and the voices of everybody here can be heard when somebody's deciding what should go and what should stay.
So, those type of decisions, right? We as a board rely on our administration, our superintendent, to make recommendations. We do have a budget a presentation that we're gonna schedule. It's probably I think it's gonna schedule right now for May 7th. We at this point have not made any decisions. We're reviewing all of the different options from the top to bottom, looking to see if we can find those efficiencies. But we will have another meeting where obviously, the public is here. They're going to see the presentation. They're going to be able to comment on it.
Yeah, okay. So again, I just want to express my concern once again, just with the pace of these things ongoing. I mean, you've heard a lot of statements tonight about parents concerned. Uh, a lot of it is we're very emotional with our extended family. A lot of it is really physical safety of our children. And, I don't need to tell you, you can't put a price on that, right? And with knee-jerk reactions like this, you could potentially be opening up the door to, God forbid, some horrible situation, which would dwarf this deficit in comparison to the expense you could be creating for all of us, let alone the consequences for one of our family members. So please, please be careful. Please be transparent. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to come up, make a comment?
Antonetta Nina, 20 Hudson Street. This is specifically for that I have also a child that goes out of district. Will my child and all children who go out of district be affected by this?
Yeah, I can say that we've budgeted appropriately for all children going out of district for next year.
Meaning my child would not be affected by this? Okay, thank you.
I just have one more question. If you make your decisions.
Please state your name again. Sorry, that's just
Sorry.
part of the process.
Richard Sabella, Harrison Street, Nutley.
Thank you.
I just have one more question. If you make your decision and you decide on your cuts, do we have the right to appeal it to somebody higher than this board?
I can't give you legal advice. I advise the board in terms of what your rights are, but it's really, as long as things are done properly legally in terms of if there are rifts or things like that, there's not much of a challenge. But you're free to consult an attorney.
Well, not only that, sir, but isn't it true that the Belleville Board of Education, the Lyndhurst Board of Education, had their boards of education taken over by the state because of discrepancies?
They weren't taken over by the state. They did have state monitors.
Right.
But they weren't taken over by the
And
state.
weren't they
There's a difference.
overseeing what the boards do in those individual cities?
Well, that's the purpose of the monitor.
Okay, do we have a monitor?
As we just answered before, we do not have a monitor at this point.
Okay, but we can request one? Do the
No,
people of the town have the
not-
right?
It's not that we can request one. It's the state will determine if one's going to be put here in Nutley. That's going to
Okay.
be a decision by the state. Our understanding is that anytime there's any type of an issue financially where the state has to fund money, they will put a monitor in place. But we are not at that point where we've received anything from the state confirming that yet. We anticipate that, but we're not at that point.
Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Jack Satter. I don't live in Nutley, but I've been a bus driver for about 5 years here. And I came to Nutley because of the great reputation you all have. And in a previous district I was in, there was embezzlement. And nobody was affected because they had insurance and insurance covered it. So I don't know if this is a cause of some sort of embezzlement, but if it is, maybe it'll be covered by insurance. And I'm just hoping maybe that will be the case. And the other thing I want to say, you said you'll be checking everything from top to bottom. Well, since this all came about at the top, please make sure you check at the top. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jim Novotny, 90 Raymond Ave in town. I just was looking for a point of clarification. Mr. Ferrara, you stated earlier that when decisions will be made about cuts and employees and whatnot, that the board was going to work closely with the EAN to make sure those decisions were made and partner with them to make that occur, right? A few minutes ago, council, you stated that when the state monitor comes in, they have the power to hire and fire unilaterally. They have the oversight, they can do whatever they want when it comes to that. Is that the case? So essentially, should we not rely on the fact that the board's going to partner with EAN? Or how's that going to work? Can you clarify?
In terms of the legal aspect of it, is that what your question was? In terms of what's the role of the state monitor? And they work collaboratively with the boards. So was your question about the board's input in that kind of in the relationship?
You made a statement earlier, right, with regards to the state monitor having the ability
they have
to make
broad
hiring,
power.
yeah,
Yes.
broad-based power,
Yeah,
right,
they
hiring,
have very
firing,
broad
right.
power, but they don't just come in and exercise it like that. They work collaboratively with the boards. I've been in other districts that have had state monitors. And even though they have those broad powers, it's not like, unless there's something really egregious, they work collaboratively with their boards.
Okay.
Can I
go ahead.
give you an answer to that? Yeah. I think one of the reasons why the board has written a corrective action plan to that nature, anticipating the state monitor coming in, is that we're trying to do things as appropriate. So state monitor doesn't come in and override our decisions, override us working with the AN in certain ways. We are trying to do things we are anticipating would happen if a state monitor was to come in.
No, it's fair. And just quickly, as a parent of two kids in the special ed program, a friend to all the teachers and paras that are out there, counsel respectively, to not call this egregious, I think is a big understatement. To not call what happened here egregious was a big understatement.
I'm sorry, just want to clarify. I think what our attorney meant before when he said egregious is if the board were to make a decision that was egregious, that the state monitor would have the ability to override the board. But the state monitor their function is to work with the board for the best interest of the district. So, sometimes that's not the case. There are certain times when, the boards may want to do things in a certain way, and that if the monitor doesn't agree, then obviously the monitor can override the board. But that's not the goal of what the monitor would be here to do. It's to work with the district to put forward a sustainable budget to make sure that we're providing for our students.
State my name again, Donna Ferraro, 34 Roosevelt Street. Does the district have an error and omissions policy that would have covered the shortfall? It's an insurance policy.
Yeah, I think that's something that, our attorneys are looking into as well.
So we didn't have one at this particular time to cover this, or did we have one?
We have an insurance policy for errors and omissions, and
Okay.
we're working with council to determine whether or not it's applicable.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Okay. How much money do we get from the state for special needs children in the district? And is that money kept separate?
Yeah, that question has come up. We get our X8 is $2.6 million. X8 is filed this time of year and comes in over the summer. In state aid, I believe it's $3.5 million in state aid, specifically for special ed. We get, I believe, 5 different types of state aid, transitional aid, all different types of security aid in that package. I believe the special ed component is $3.5 million. Is it kept separate? The special education expenditures are budgeted separately from
regular.
Yeah.
From regular gen ed.
Yes. So there's different expenditures for gen ed, special ed, tuitions, for example, things of that nature.
Okay, thank
But
you.
just to clarify too, right, that the state aid that we get for our special ed area does not cover the entire cost of what the special ed budget is.
Specifically, how much money is it per child? Do you know?
We can't speak to delimiters like that, unfortunately, publicly. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Elizabeth Villanueva, 25 Cathedral Avenue. I have 2 questions. The first is you stated about some of the reason for the shortfall would be that the estimates of expenditures and incomes didn't end up being what they were projected to be. So I have a question about revenue, types of revenue that the school board expects and receives. So that is what? Taxes, grants, state aid, any other types of revenue that are available to
Yeah,
us?
there's state grants, sometimes there's federal grants, but most of that comes from the tax levy.
Okay, so that was maybe underestimated then in previous budget? Is that
No,
what it was?
it wasn't the tax levy that was underestimated. It was certain areas with miscellaneous revenue. That's, fines and forfeitures, that kind of stuff. It's in the presentation that we presented at the last meeting.
Yeah, I looked over some of that. I was wondering about, I think there was a piece about rental income or revenue, and I was wondering if there are real estate properties owned by the Board of Ed, by the district, or I don't even know, by the town, but specifically owned by the Board of Ed that are not school buildings or athletic fields.
So we just want to make it clear, right? The Board of Education and the town, two separate entities.
Right, yeah.
The Board of Education, there are various little odd, irregular shaped pieces of property that sometimes, are irregular. They're in an area where they're not easily accessible. And so, yes, that we do have certain areas in town, certain parcels.
Okay, because I was wondering, I mean, even if they are irregular pieces of property, I'm sure they have some value, and maybe we could look at additional revenue or income in addition to cuts.
Absolutely. And we are looking into that as well.
Okay, thank you. And another thing I just wanted to mention, I feel like it probably goes without saying, but it should definitely be said that when we're speaking up for our special education staff, bus drivers, bus aides, paras, teachers, we are 100% also meaning to speak for the therapists, the OTs, the PTs, the speech therapists, and other support staff. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Board of Education and Administration. I don't have any questions for the board tonight, but rather simply a statement or a plead. As a Nutley taxpayer, Nutley parent, Nutley High School graduate, and former Nutley teacher and administrator, I've witnessed the challenges that we face here firsthand. Our current financial deficit, while concerning, was not unforeseen. It's the culmination of trends and decisions that were made over time. However, I am not here to place blame, but rather to plead for clarity, decisive action, and careful review of the impacts your decisions will have on the outstanding educators of Nutley and our innocent children. I plead that you all carefully consider our options and make decisions that prioritize the well-being of our students and the long-term sustainability of our district. This may require difficult choices and strategic future plans, but it's essential that we act responsibly and with foresight so that our students continue to receive the quality education they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, David Kay, 706 Bloomfield Avenue. I read a lot. I've read all the good stuff over the last couple of years. I know most of you personally, and this is no disrespect, but I'm just going to cut right to it. Procedures were not followed. They're in the bylaws of the Board of Ed. Not followed as far as the day-to-day, which it's convenient that the 9 of you who are elected by the public that are non-pension, non-paid individuals fight so hard for some of you to be on there for in excess of decades, who have specifically stated in the past that there's only a 1 to 2% of the actual, roughly what was over the last 3 years, about 80 million before ESSER and other things that got from the state and the extension of the pre-K. You can't have it both ways, where you say that you're not responsible for anything, but if you look at the org chart and the bylaws, the 9 of you who have been elected as Board of Ed members, except for the gentleman who has been recently appointed, you can't have it both ways, okay? Just calling it out like it is. And respectfully, there's a lot of people who really don't want to see any of you making those decisions moving forward. I'm not going to talk about a million things that I can, but I can tell you right now, You know how much money is coming in every year, fairly close to what it's been the year before. You have some very, very good visibility to what the future is going to look like. Not very different. The fact that money was moved from capital reserves, meetings were held, minutes either are going to be found that were there, and everyone in those committee meetings voted on it, with or without a finance degree, you were aware of it. And if you weren't, well, then you weren't following the bylaws. In either way, nobody believes that the 8 individuals who have been elected besides the one appointed person, respectfully, should be on this board moving forward. And I'm going to suggest, based upon the bylaws, that you hold the special elections, you stagger the terms, and that's how you fix the board and you get new people in who actually want to do good for the school district.
Any other questions?
Yes. Barbara DeViti, Hopper Avenue. Has the board found out why the information was withheld by the business manager or the business office?
Sorry, could you?
You said that the board was not informed by the business office or the business manager that information was withheld from you and that you didn't know what was going on. Have you found out why they withheld that information?
I mean, I don't want to use the fact that it's tied to a personnel matter and we're not in at liberty to go further. But part of the process that resulted in us uncovering the issues are tied to lack of clarity and information that we asked for. So it's not a whole answer to your question. I understand what you're asking, but some of what we'd like to share with you, unfortunately, we can't at this time.
Has anyone been suspended with or without pay?
I think that's a personnel matter. Scott?
Yeah, there's been no,
Yeah.
well, there has been an administrative leave. There has been an
Yes.
administrative leave with which it was on the board agenda.
Yes, in the
So it was on the
FAQ.
public agenda that there was an administrative leave at this time, and
With
things are still
pay?
under investigation.
With pay?
By law, we have to until we finish our investigation. But under the tenure laws, you have to pay somebody, even if they're on leave, until you have
Enough
further-
information to convict. I would suggest that you try to hold assets of that person, maybe to help give back some of the money that was taken.
Thank you. Any further questions?
Good evening, Brian Canova, 147 Beach Street. No political speech from me. Just wanted to say, I think a lot of this, what we've been feeling the past few weeks and months come just from a lack of knowledge of how things play out on a financial level. So Trustee Battaglia, you said earlier, like the role of the treasurer is limited. The role of the finance committee is limited in scope. As far as what you were showing wouldn't be, what you were presented with wouldn't show like a balance sheet that we were in arrears. Is that correct?
I think to answer your question correctly, I'll restate what the comments I made before about the treasurer's report, and that the treasurer's report is simply a reconciliation of activity that occurred in a bank account. Information that's in the treasurer's report produces no more knowledge into the physical health of the district other than looking at your bank statement at a particular point in time.
So, and that is the extent of the information, financial information that that the treasurer would receive or that the finance committee would receive.
That is not thank you for clarifying. Help me out here. The treasurer's report is just one tool that we are given as part of a sort of general review of the finances of the district. I think my point is, and this has come up in previous discussions, the treasurer's report is actually fairly limited in its value. It's produced based on state statute, and the information that's in there is not a highly indicative state of the financial health of the district, which is why using the treasurer report to identify trends, positive or negative, is not what would be considered best practice.
And so everyone knew this beforehand as far as it's a snapshot, I think you said at the last meeting.
Fair.
So why use that as a gauge for the financial health of the school district?
We don't. It's produced as part of state statute.
All right. So in a lot of these cases, would I be correct in assuming that you are tied to state statutes as far as the information that you are allowed to see? Financial information that you're allowed to see? Like you can't open up the books and look line by line. Trustee Battaglia and anyone on the finance committee can't do that. I just want to make it clear, just so we all know that. I mean, you're saying that, but I just want to, can anyone on the finance committee open up the books and look line by line? For example, hypothetical, let's say, and maybe this will help us understand how the process happens. Let's just say we need a new weight room. Hey, I'm class of 95 state champs. I played football. I know the Battaglia family. So let's just say $40,000 approved. Finance committee approves at $40,000. Complete hypothetical. So we're approving for $40,000. Maybe closer to 200 grand is what we're actually paying. What happens in the process there? Does the finance committee, you were saying earlier, counsel, that it's policy, that is, you can't get involved in the nitty gritty. So is it what we're expecting to pay? Is that what's approved? But as far as what's going out, is there a disconnect there?
So if there was a particular project and there was a cost associated to that project, we would approve the cost for that project.
Okay. What I was trying to say is, on a daily basis, they can't be good. They can't be going through there. But if there's an issue or something in particular, the board members are entitled to look at whatever they want to look at.
But
We
how do
can't
we
do it every day?
Okay, so can we do it every other week, or like how do we know if we're at the mercy of a BA? If we're at the mercy of one person who was a little bit of a stunad, to use the term that I think Nutley's, believe me, I have another name, but I cannot use it. But it seems to me that short of incurring the extra expense of going outside to the Geltrude accounting firm, are there any no-cost supports that you're looking at to ensure transparency and a balanced budget? Are we going to be going to Geltrude every month? Is this like the cost of doing business now?
So I would say, and I believe one of the previous individuals pointed out or asked the question as to what the running cost is. When we're making decisions, by the reason that we're bringing in two outside auditing firms, they're going to perform two separate functions. But once those functions are in place, our expectation is it will be less expensive to use an outside service, which will also give us the added benefit of non-affiliated internal employees providing us information.
But it's still an extra cost.
It's not an extra cost.
Oh, it isn't. So we're not being.
Our expectation when we talk about efficiencies, if we are going to outsource certain responsibilities, we're not going to keep individuals in that seat to do that responsibility. We may place those individuals in other places in the district, but our expectation is we are going to set a budget for our business office, and that will include personnel internally and externally.
So a system of checks and balances in place. So externally, no charge. This is what I go.
Well, there'll be a charge.
Okay.
It'll just be part of our assumed budget.
All right.
So if as I
At
said,
the end of the day, there are people in-house who we can't totally trust, because if we do, we're going to be back here very
I'd be
likely.
very careful with the term trust, right? We just, right? These are individuals, some of them which currently work today, right? So, but what I would say is our objective is to provide the level of transparency that you would not typically see in a municipality or in a governmental entity. We're going to do it with with controls that you would expect to see in more of a corporate environment.
So the no cost would be, as you said, would be moving people around in different positions as far as oversight. That wouldn't be an additional cost to us, but there would be an accounting oversight, which is all part of the process.
Yeah, and we have some natural attrition of personnel who have left the district, and we may not replace those individuals and outsource their responsibility to a third-party provider as an example.
All right, well, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Well, good evening, Patrick Sweeney, 53 Emily Avenue. I don't know why I read the corrective action plan, and I don't know why this jumped out to me, but in section 4, I highlighted, it said the superintendent will create a formal process for business office staff to escalate concerns when they feel direct attention is needed. That leads me to believe when I read that there was a concerned employee at the business office that had some kind of inkling or knew what was going on and couldn't bring it to someone's attention for whatever reason. Could you advise whether that was the case, number one? And where are you with implementing this formal process for employees to bring these things to your attention?
Do you want me to comment? Yeah, the first matter is an ongoing personnel issue. I can't comment on. I'm sorry. I do apologize for that. The second matter is communication informally started immediately with the business office, for me, in extending lines of communication directly to me, and a formal process will be brought to the board and enshrined in policy to make sure that happens on an ongoing basis.
Can you explain how the potential formal process differs from the informal process that's currently in place?
I don't think there's much difference in what I spoke to the business office about in the formal process, but I would like to document it and make sure the board's aware of, as well as our staff members, of the operating procedure moving forward.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else have any questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, can I have a motion to close the public comment portion? Anyone second? Okay, all in favor? Okay, Mr. Kaczynski, can you move academic resolutions? Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Balsamo? Mr. Battaglia? Mrs. Dancheck Martin? Okay. Dr. D'Elia? Mr. Fraginels? Mr. Kaczynski? Mrs. Quirk? Mr. Scotty? And Mr. Farrow?
Yes. Mr. D'Elia, could you move academic, please? No, I'm sorry, administration. Yeah, Mr. Kaczynski, move administration, please. Discussion?
Mr. Balsamo? Mr. Battaglia?
Yes.
Mrs. Dancheck Martin? Dr. D'Elia? Mr. Fraginels? Mr. Kaczynski? Mrs. Quirk?
Yes.
Mr. Scotty?
Yes.
Mr. Farrow?
Yes. Mr. Battaglia, finance?
Yeah, Mr. President, I'd like to move resolutions 1 through 12 as written. Finance.
Discussion?
Mr. Balsamo? Mr. Battaglia? Mrs. Dancheck Martin?
Yes.
Dr. D'Elia? Mr. Fraginels? Mr. Kaczynski?
Yes.
Mrs. Quirk?
Yes.
Mr. Scotty?
Yes.
Mr. Ferraro?
Yes. Any old business to come before the board?
Personnel?
Oh, I'm sorry. Where's personnel?
On the bottom.
Where's it?
Page 8.
Okay. Mr. Balsamo? Would you move
Yeah.
personnel, please?
Yes, Mr. President, I'd like to move personnel, item 1, A through G.
Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Balsamo? Mr. Battaglia? Mrs. Dancheck Martin?
Yes.
Dr. D'Elia? Mr. Fraginels? Mr. Kaczynski?
Yes.
Mrs. Quirk?
Yes.
Mr. Scotty?
Yes.
Mr. Farrow?
Yes. Any old business to come before the board?
If you don't mind, I think there was some discussion in the past about having some landscaping work done at Spring Garden. The parents at Spring Garden have raised the money to buy a tree in memory of one of the teachers from Spring Garden, along with they're raising money to put some blocks in. When I spoke to Mr. Banya about it, he had to make sure it went through a school board meeting, so all board members are aware that they're looking to do some landscaping at Spring Garden at no cost except for the advice of Mr. Costa on where we're going to plant the tree.
Okay, is there anything?
No,
Just for information?
Just for
So this is
information.
something that we would take up in committee? Location of where they're looking to do the work?
I guess we could. I didn't, yes, if that's what you want to do, yes.
Okay. Any new business to come before the board? Okay, whereas the Board of Education will be discussing matters exempt from public discussion pursuant to NJSA 10:4-12. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Education recess to close executive session at this time to discuss personnel, anticipated litigation, and service contracts. Be it further resolved that the results of the discussions will be made public by inclusion on the agenda of a subsequent meeting of the Board of Education, or when the reasons for discussing such matters in closed session no longer exist. No action will be taken from the board upon return from the executive. Can I get a motion to adjourn into executive?
Make the motion.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.